All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to open the open session of the Coventry School Committee. I have 6 o'clock. Could we have a roll call vote, please? A roll call, please, Mrs. Martin?
Catherine Patnode,
Here.
David Florio,
Here.
Luke Murray,
Here.
Donna Kalunian,
Here.
James Pearson,
Here.
Craig Levis.
Here.
Great. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we go into executive session at 6:02 PM.
Second the motion.
Great. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Catherine Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Kalunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everyone. So we will recess into executive session and meet back in the public after our session. So see you at the other meeting. So good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee. I have 6:30. And I'd like us to start with a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. Thank you. Moving on to our mission statement. If our member, Mr. Pearson, if you could do the honor of reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools, please.
I can. The mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you so much. And just to notify the public, the committee met in executive session starting at 6 o'clock, and we met for about 15-20 minutes. There were several votes taken, 2 5-0 votes for acceptance of approval of the executive session minutes of 3/4/21 and 3/11/21. And we also voted 4 to, with 1 abstention for regarding the Carlos versus Town of Coventry litigation. That being said, is there a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session, please?
Madam Chair, I make a vote that I propose that the records of the executive session be closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. And could we have a roll call vote, please? Mrs. Martins?
Catherine Patnode,
Yes.
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Kalunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 5, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And is there a roll call vote, please? Mrs. Martin?
Catherine Patnode,
Yes.
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Kalunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Low on the mute button. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. That concludes the business agenda. We will proceed now into the public agenda. And for all of our attendees, the following agenda items are open for discussion, and we will allow the public to ask questions and have any comments they wish to have. You just have to raise your hand and you will be brought into the meeting by our IT director, Mr. Murphy. If any votes are taken and a motion is made before I call for the vote, I will also ask for public comments if there are any. That being said, we can move into the favorite part of our agenda, which is celebration. This time it's the celebration of our school nurse teachers. Mr. Levis, would you like to begin this, please?
Yes, it's not just our school nurse teachers, but it's also our COVID nurses, our RNs. We're joined by
Oh,
them also. And so tonight we're joined by Melissa Thibodeau, Peg Carroll, Kimberly Plant, who am I missing? Sarah Blessing, and Terry Sullivan. We invited all the nurses to come, but many of them had other obligations. And, everybody's been important. And I know I'm a broken record when I talk about how challenging this year has been for everybody. But from the get-go, from March 13th, when we were, of last year, when we were told we're going to have a week off, our nurses have been in the forefront of the planning. We started the reentry planning. They worked all summer long to support us. They are our medical experts. And even though I'm constantly, I hope I'm constantly saying thank you to them and publicly acknowledging them. We've had individuals, Melissa and Deb Oliver also helped at our clinic that we've held that took place on, what was it, last Friday, I don't even know what month we're in, March 19th. And, Jason Martin also was a big help there, but these guys have just been phenomenal. And again, I don't always, we don't always single out a classification, but, it's impossible not to say thank you to the work that they've been doing, just the confidence that they instill in our buildings. We started with the Buy Next Now testing. In fact, I think Melissa and Gina Duguano were here in my building this morning and doing testing for our staff here. So, they've just been phenomenal. And so I want to give an opportunity for the committee, for the community, and also for them to say, if they want to say a few words, but they've just been, we are so blessed. And, to have the caliber of individuals we have across the board, but I really want to highlight the work that they've been doing. Later on, we're going to be talking about a full return, and a lot of it's because of the confidence that they've instilled in their staff and in their families. So I've said enough. Again, thank you to everybody that was able to attend tonight. Thank you to those that weren't able to attend. I don't know what else to say other than thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well said, Mr. Levis. I'm going to let the committee comment if they'd like, and I'll start with Mr. Pearson.
I don't know what else to say, Mr. Levis. You said it all. Thank you very much, of course, to our nursing staff in help guiding us and helping to show leadership during the past. It's 12 months now. Really, not enough can be said about the impact it's had on this community. And my daughter has no trouble going to school, knowing things are being taken care of, knowing that there's testing in place and that there's protocols in place if something happens. And again, a lot of that could not happen without our nursing staff. So thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Kalunian.
Thank you all for all you do every day. It's a tireless job, I know, but as Mr. Pearson said, as Mr. Levis said, the kids feel safe going to school knowing that there's someone there to take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. And you have a tireless job, and we thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. Mr. Murray?
Thank you. Obviously, thank you. It's been a very challenging year. Appreciate all of you making the time to come tonight. But I'm not going to let you off the hook because you showed up. I have a question for each one of you because I'd like to hear from you. It has been a challenging year. So I'd be interested in each one of you. What do you picture as your greatest challenge this year? And obviously COVID being one of them, but personal challenge in dealing with this, and then your greatest achievement this year you feel from each one of you. And I'll start with Melissa. Would you mind sharing that with me? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm not
I
gonna
know,
make it
gee,
easy.
thanks.
There's no wrong answer, by the way.
I know. If anybody knows me, I'm like the wallflower of the group. So for me to speak up first, I guess the greatest challenge has just been trying to navigate it. The biggest running joke of all the medical professionals is, what's the one job you don't want in a global health pandemic? And that was school nurse, It's been tough navigating and educating staff to return and feel comfortable in their, I guess, new role in, we understand infection control measures, we understand public health, but for a teacher who doesn't really understand that, it's hard for them to navigate. So, you give a lot emotionally to your staff and to your kids to make sure that everybody feels safe, and it can be quite draining. And I know we all work very long hours. Some of us start with phone calls at 5 o'clock in the morning and we don't end until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then my greatest achievement has just been, helping out, just being a nurse. That's it.
Thank you. Not bad for a wallflower.
I
You did a
know, right?
great job. No, it's interesting because, I don't have the opportunity. We don't get this opportunity a lot to hear from you. So I appreciate it. Kimberly?
Hello, and thank you for inviting us. I think that the biggest challenge for me would be trying to keep up with all the changes and the guidelines and try to, extend that knowledge to everybody else, the parents, the teachers. So that was a challenge, but, working as a team, I want to acknowledge my fellow school nurse teachers because I wouldn't be able to do it without them as a group. So, and they are the best. I would say that I am feeling very confident as a public health worker now. Serving the public, I feel like this has been a great accomplishment. I've always worked in a hospital before as school nurse, so you're serving that small community, but now it feels like something so much bigger, and it feels like a real big accomplishment.
It is.
So I am thankful for that.
And you're telling me that the Department of Health has changed the guidelines a lot? Really?
Just occasionally.
Thanks for the input. Peg? Can you unmute it? Right.
There we go. Right. Hi. So I'd have to say probably one of the biggest challenges for me personally was learning and navigating all types of, working with the computer and learning all new challenging ways to navigate with Google and those types of things. That's not typically in the nursing role. I'd have to say it's probably also one of my bigger achievements this year. But also working with families and education is a huge role of nursing. I think a lot of people might not, that might not be the first thought they have, but for me, it's always been a big part of nursing for me. So I have to say that this has given me the opportunity to be in that role a lot, whether it's with families or certainly with staff this year being in the role that I've been. So being able to help people navigate the very confusing aspects of working during a pandemic is very satisfying. To be able to help people navigate through that has been nice. So, and I agree that I don't think any of this would have worked if we didn't have a great nursing staff and we all work well together. So I think that has helped a lot. And of course, we've had the support of admin. So I think that that has helped us be successful so far.
Silver lining came out of it, right? You became more tech savvy. Right?
A little bit, yes.
I think we all have. hence the Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, you willing to share?
Hi. Thank you so much for having us. And I want to say that I feel so lucky to be a part of this team. This is my first year at the middle school. I came from a small elementary private school before this. So honestly, every single aspect of my job has been a challenge this year. But I would say I've learned so much, and I'm really proud of what we have accomplished at the middle school. And hopefully, you know, we've made people, parents, students feel safe, our staff, and just learning so much has been a great accomplishment. I've really learned so much, and I'm sure going to keep learning a lot from these amazing nurses that I get to work with every day.
Well, thank you for coming over to the public school side of things. So,
You're welcome.
and Terry.
Hi, I work with Sarah. I'm the COVID nurse at the middle school. I lost my job as when this all started. I was a nurse in a private school. And then I just started doing the volunteering with the Medical Reserve Corps. I've been with them for 15 years, so I just shifted over to that for a while. Then when I saw this come up, I said, I'm going to try this, get back into it. And to work with Sarah and all these other wonderful women, it's just, I don't think everybody realizes how well they get along together. It's just incredible. Everybody's there to help, a lending hand to everybody. And during this, when everybody's emotions are running so high, to get that and get that kind of quality out of people and that compassion out of people, everyone keeps their cool. And Sarah can tell you, it's not a day go by we don't laugh our heads off in that office about something. It's something will just strike us and we will be almost in tears. But but that's what you need. But everybody's always there. If we don't know something, you can call somebody and someone's always willing to lend a helping hand. You have a great group of nurses here, and I hope everybody realizes that.
Thank you. I hope I didn't put you on the spot too much, but I really wanted to hear from you. I know we can say, we appreciate it and everything, but it obviously you have a great team. I'm proud of that, and I really wanted to hear your take on it. I also, my mother was a nurse, and I know how special the profession is, and I really appreciate what you do. So thank you for sharing, and what else to say, but thank you. And thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And Mr. Florio.
Well, it's hard to elaborate on what was just spoken about, but I recognize nurses. First of all, I've been hospitalized myself one time, and my aunt was a nurse, and and my cousin Adele Casali is a nurse at Butler Hospital and nurse practitioner. And I have to say, all our nurses, I consider you heroes. You've shown empathy towards staff and kids, caring for kids from grades K to 12, and you treat them as human beings and not patients. You treat them like you would treat your own kids. And I'm very appreciative of the work that you've shown and you've done. And I hear a lot of commendations coming from parents. And all I want to say is thank you. Thank you very much for the work you do. And thank you, Mrs. Patno, for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I don't know how much I could follow up on all of those remarks, except to say how proud we are of you and how thankful. Like Mr. Florio said, you really are heroes, and you've gotten us through just an unbelievably difficult year in our schools. And the fact that our teachers can trust you, our principals can trust you, and our students just means everything. And you've made it possible for us to open up as much as we've been able to. So I just couldn't thank you enough and praise you enough And I'm so glad we had this opportunity to see you and thank you and continue your fabulous work. You've chosen a vocation that is just amazing. And it's, you know, I couldn't thank you more. So I'm going to bring it out to the public. I see there's at least one hand up, Mr. Murphy. Is that person available?
Yes, it's Mr. Wilson. I'll bring him in. Okay, Brad. Just unmute your microphone.
Sorry, did you say Brett?
Nope.
Okay.
Here he comes.
For those who don't know me, I'm the Director of Special Education. And one of my roles that a lot of people don't know is I oversee the nursing staff in Coventry. And I know I'm not going to say everything I want to, but I cannot say enough about this group. You know, people forget that this is going back over a year now to March 13th, 2020. And literally, like at that moment, this group started meeting often and I was a fly on the wall. And the extent of my medical knowledge is just being like Luke, the son of a nurse. So I always appreciated nurses, but man, when it came to like decision making as a special ed director, I thought like, wow, I'm in a whole new realm now. And now I'm asked to make these decisions, but I don't have that background. So literally every step of the way, I had one of the school nurse teachers next to me helping me make every decision. I mean, I think what people forget, it's every day over the summer. We didn't take summer vacations. They were there, whether I text them on a weekend about a crazy question, they helped me design new health offices, COVID suites, all the classrooms, how they were going to be designed. I mean, there was so much work to go in, and I cannot thank this group enough for everything they did. I mean, dealing with the parent fears, the kids' fears, the staff's fears, my fears. They did such a good job with going on all the different meetings with the school nurse teachers around the state, with the Department of Health, taking such good notes and keeping like all the admin really kind of up to speed. In fact, other districts were begging me for my notes by the end of the summer, and we were really sharing with everybody. I don't think anybody did it better than Coventry, and I don't think anybody even came close to doing it better than this group did it. So for that, I need to publicly thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up even our SRP nursing staff. I mean, people that come in and had this, job where they might be overseeing one classroom or a couple kids, and now we're asking them, hey, 9 in the morning, I need you to run over to Tyler, or I need you to run over to the high school. I need you to watch a COVID room, and just diving right in and doing what needed to be done for the kids in Coventry and the people in Coventry, and just doing what was right. So, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I spent more time with you in this last year than I did with my own family. So I got to thank you, and I could not have done this without you. And geez, maybe I'll get an honorary nursing degree from somewhere by the time this is over. But I seriously, and I think the icing on the cake is when I finally got my vaccination. It was one of my school nurse teachers that put it in me. And I went home and I told my wife, I told my friends, I'm like, it was a perfect end to this story for me. I don't want to get emotional, but again, thank you all. I'm going to stop talking before I say anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, Mr. Wilson. It's really appreciated, and I'm sure the ladies here appreciate that as well. Before we let you go, are there any? Oh, I guess we have one more attendee that's got a question up. So, Mr. Murphy, could you bring that person in?
Sure. Mrs. Jackard, you're up now. Just unmute your microphone.
Hi. For those of you who don't know me, I am Paula Jackard. My address is 175 MacArthur Boulevard in Coventry. I just want to jump on the bandwagon and say thank you to all of the nursing staff. I probably know more about COVID than I ever dreamed imaginable. I have worn many hats in the district through the years. Being a nurse, I can guarantee you, is not one I ever want to wear, ever. I want to thank, I've called Peg on several occasions in the morning, early morning. Poor Melissa, every time she rings my phone, I panic, thinking that something catastrophic is happening, even when it's not. Melissa has absolutely worked beside me with the staff. She's educated us. She's made us feel safe. She's made the staff, the students, the parents. There are so many parents that we've had to talk off ledges because of the fears that they had about this disease. And she's made it much smoother. She's made our transition through this year incredible. I honestly can say I don't know where I'd be without her. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Mrs. Jaccard. It looks like we have more hands up, so Mr. Murphy.
Okay. Carol, you're up next. If you could just state your name and address for the record and unmute your microphone.
It's Carol Vada, 3 Patty Street in Coventry.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, this is my first meeting, so I'm a little wet behind the ears. So I'm looking at the agenda and how this is all formatted. And I was trying to follow how long this meeting even lasts. And so I guess we're allowed to speak about things that are on the agenda only.
Yes, and actually, on this particular item, it's just about the celebration agenda piece. So if you have something to say about something else, it would be better if you waited until the end of the meeting, because we do have public comment at the very end, and you can bring up things that aren't on the agenda. We just can't really make any decisions about it, but you can bring something forward if you like. So if it's not about this particular agenda item, I can't speak for how long this meeting will be, but public comment is at the end, the final public comment.
Okay, because I have another meeting to go to at 7. So I was just curious how long they usually last.
It really depends, but if you do have something to bring up, you can always email one of us or all of us or the superintendent or to get a point across. If you can't, if when you come back, we're not meeting any longer. I really can't estimate. We'll be at least another hour, could be 2 hours, depending.
Okay, so I guess with this particular agenda item, I know it says specifically school nurses.
Yes.
But being a laboratorian professional for 15 plus years, even though I'm not currently doing it, it'd be great to acknowledge all the laboratory staff that work endless hours to even get the testing off the ground and reporting, and the work the Department of Health has done. So if we're gonna talk celebration and who's done what with COVID, I just wanted to mention that as well. And I guess I'll just send an email to somebody regarding the Coventry mission statement and how I see Brad Wilson on here, and how the effective communication piece that was mentioned earlier, how that fits in with kids with disabilities, because the mission statement is not inclusive of kids with disabilities.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Carol. It's very, all right. Do we have someone else with their hand up, Mr. Murphy?
It's Miss Anzalone. I'll bring her in now. Amy, you just need to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. So I want to also say my thanks, first of all, to Nurse Peg, who is, I guess all of our nurse now. So we certainly appreciate all of her help across the district. Thank you, Nurse Peg. And then I know I'm speaking for my staff as well as myself that we are so incredibly grateful for Nurse Emily at Western Coventry this year. And I know she's not on this call, but I feel like I need to really mention her because I rely on her every day and every weekend. And I can't imagine this year without her. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments, Mrs. Anzalone. All right, well, I don't see any more hands up. Do we have any final comments from our nurses before we let you go? You were already put on the spot, so which was great because it was nice to hear from each of you individually. And typically people won't do it unless they actually are called out to do it. So I'm glad that Mr. Murray did that. So again, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so glad you were able to join us. And like I said at the beginning, this is really the best part of being on school committee, the celebrations of folks like you. And so we just appreciate you so much. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the evening. You can stay if you want, but I don't mind you going either. So bye. Okay, so I guess we're ready to move to agenda item number 7, which is the Upcycle Collaborative, excuse me, collaborative clothing discussion, which was our reference number 1. And Mr. Levis, did you want to start this?
Yeah, I know Mr. Robichaud was here. I don't see him anymore.
Yeah, I don't either.
You'd asked him to come back, and I had shared the flyer with you. So I don't know where he went. I don't know if he's back in the attendees. Take a look. But
I don't see him in the attendees.
Maybe he lost service or something.
yeah, maybe we can just, I mean, again, we can.
If he shows back up again, we'll let him talk.
It was
give
just
his
really for
presentation.
him to explain what he does. He's in the town. He noticed that we
Yeah.
had some boxes that were taken away by Goodwill. So I just wanted the opportunity. So
Okay.
yes.
All right. And I guess we can move on to number 8, which is the introduction of our new finance director. And Mr. Levis, if you'd like to start this one.
And I'm just ecstatic, excited to introduce tonight to our community, our school community, and the community, Harold Sands. He's our director of finance. He just started on Monday. But one thing that, Harold has over 25 years experience in educational finance and in finance in other areas. I think I shared a note with our staff. He's lived almost on every continent. He has a rich history in Rhode Island. His family were the original part of the original owners of Block Island, and just, historic family. And but what I really was impressed about Mr. Sands is that he spent a lot of time making the decision if he was going to come here. He spent a lot of time asking questions, spent a lot of time talking to Sarah, and just, he knows, obviously, until you experience something, you don't really know what you're getting into. But he had the blessing of everybody that interviewed him. Mr. Anderson has worked with him for many years. We've had many interactions in a few short days, and I am so impressed. And again, we all love Sarah, and Sarah's did so much and continues behind the scenes to really, help us in terms of putting systems in place, policies. We're definitely moving in the right direction, and I'm so comfortable just seeing the interaction between, Harold and Miss Mangiarelli over the last few days. God bless you. And, I am comfortable and confident that you will feel the same way I do, that when he speaks, people are going to definitely listen. His passion, commitment, and, again, I feel so thankful, because we all know when Sarah made a career change and, a life change, and it was the best for her, but my heart sank. And lo and behold, Mr. Sands arrives. And again, I just want to introduce him. I'd like Harold to talk a little bit about yourself, and then, we'll let, I'm sure Ms. Patno will let anybody ask questions or make comments. And so I introduced you, Harold Sands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levis. I don't know how I can follow all the accolades that you've just given me, especially after meeting Sarah and taking literally 2 weeks, even longer than that, to sort of make a decision, coming to the school committee, listening to what everybody had to say. I didn't take this lightly, because I came from a school that I built from basically 0 up in 3.5 years, and could have stayed there forever, but I still want the challenge. I don't want to stop. I want to continue. And when I talked to Sarah, one of the things that came across was that I really wanted to continue Sarah's work here. Her financial transparency that she's started here, making sure that the Coventry district felt confident about the numbers, have financial confidence, and and also to develop innovative ways of being able to basically look at the numbers in the future so that everybody can understand them, so that people can come to me and say, hey, what if we do this? So that it opens up to everybody. Just to follow on where Mr. Levis said, that I come from a varied background. I was in venture capital, I was in hedge funds, I worked with banks, I worked with University of Phoenix, and this was all before I got into education. So I've had the experience of understanding where places start, what's important, and that's what I want to sort of bring in, and I have done it in other schools, but I also want to bring it into Coventry and continue what Sarah has done with my own spin on it. And having that dialogue with Sarah was by far the most important thing for me, because of how much she's brought the school district into transparency, that it just meant a lot to me. That and knowing that there's still a challenge here, and making sure that we overcome that challenge going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, Mr. Sands. I'm going to start with Mr. Pearson. Did you have any questions, comments for our new director?
Welcome aboard. Big shoes to fill, but I'm sure you will do fine. And if you ever want to talk genealogy stuff offline, I have roots that also go back to Block Island in the 1600s. So be interesting to compare notes, so to speak.
I would love to do that, Mr. Flory.
So welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Kalunian?
Welcome to Coventry. I hope you will enjoy working for Mr. Levis, and I look forward to working with you.
I look forward to it too, Mrs. Clooney.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. Mr. Murray?
Well, Mr. Sands and I have already met a couple times because of the building committee. So we've already started a dialogue, so I'll say it again, but welcome aboard. As you know, Sarah had some pretty tough shoes to fill, but you do not need to fill those shoes. And I fully expect that you'll chart your own path. It sounds like you want to follow a similar path, but I'm really interested in your previous experience. I like the fact that you have outside and private industry experience, and it sounds like you're a creative thinker, which is, I think, exactly what we need. We need to bend the kind of thinking curve here, and how do we address the challenge and kind of twist it and look at it in a different perspective. So I look forward to your viewpoints on that. Anything we can do to make the transition smoother. I think it's going to be a little baptism by fire to seeing that we're in budget season. But I know you've been talking to Sarah, and I know she's been committed to transitioning everybody over, which shows her commitment to the school district, and really is the sort of capstone on her career in the district. I think her getting us acclimated to somebody new and getting us somebody so qualified is a really testament to her career here. And it seems like across the street, you'll have some new counterparts with the new town manager and Lisa Mills, who's the new finance director. So you're in good company. You're all coming up together, and hopefully that develops a really good rapport with the other side of the roadway. So
Yeah, I think that's a very important note, Mr. Murray, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio?
Hey, Mr. Sands, how are you?
Good, Mr. Florio.
How's it going? You have a good night?
I am.
Very good. Very good. If there's anything I can do to help you, you just let me know, and vice versa. If I have any questions on the budget, I will contact you and we can meet and talk about it. Yeah, I'm impressed, Mr. Sands. I'm impressed with you and your background, and impressed that you chose to come here. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Florio. And absolutely, anytime you'd like to call, please feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Sands. Thank you.
You might regret that, Mr. Sands. No, just kidding.
You never know, Mr. Sands.
Anyway, yes, welcome. So we're so grateful that you decided to come to Coventry, and we're not an easy place. I think you're going to find that out and probably have gotten some warnings that might have been part of the 2-week wondering what you should do. But I do think that there are some great people here, certainly on both sides of the street, the town council and on the school committee side. And all we can hope for is that we continue to work together as partners, and that we continue to have good working relationships. And I have no doubt from your experience that you're going to do great things for us in Coventry as well. So welcome. And
Thank you very
good
much.
luck.
As Mr. Murray said, it is a little bit trial by fire, but when you have somebody behind you, as Sarah is behind me at this point in time, it is a lot easier.
No, that's very well said. We're really blessed that she was able to help us with the transition. So I know you have a lot of experience, but it's also nice to hear from someone who's actually here, and they can help guide you a bit through the budget process that we have here. So very grateful for both you and Sarah, obviously, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I don't see any hands up, Mr. Murphy. That is correct, right?
You are correct.
Okay, so I think we can probably move on to our next item, which is, I just realized Mr. Robichaud is here. I did see him get back in, so if
Yes, hello.
you could say hello to us. Hey, great.
Hi,
There you
everyone.
are.
I'm so sorry. My computer bumped me out of the Zoom, and I was like, oh no.
I figured you lost internet or something, so.
It might have been that, but the computer went down. But the good news is I have all these gadgets, so it all worked out.
Good. So, Mr. Levis, would you like to start your introduction again?
Yeah, just that I was introduced to Brett and his company Upcycle Collaborative through actually Ms. Tankrell. Brett lives in town, provides a service. He's the one that provides the recycling, through the town to all
bags,
citizens. And he and I spoke. He noticed that Goodwill bins had been removed. I explained to him the process, how Goodwill had come before, and he and I had a conversation. Next thing was, I said, why don't you come to a meeting just to talk a little bit about your company. I'm not asking the committee to vote on anything tonight, but I know that there's been questions. The big issue, and Mr. Robichaud knows that the issue we had, and the reason Goodwill took away some of the bins was because it was costing them more to take and, to dump some of the materials. Somebody left an old-fashioned large screen TV, we have tires, all these different things that have been left. And, that includes Mr. Martin also had the facilities go by and pick things up. So we have, I think, 4 schools right now that don't have anything at them. I know that the schools enjoyed getting some of the revenue. We have very little discretionary funds. There were funds that went, that they would receive on a quarterly basis that would allow them to purchase turkeys for families or do something special for staff or students. So that's why I asked Brett to come tonight, just talk a little bit about, and if anybody has any questions, and then I think offline, he and I can work things out. I still, like we did before, principals need to be on board. But I thought first things first. So having said that, Brett, I'll turn it over to you. If you have, anything you want to share about your company, and then we'll let the committee ask any questions they want.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Craig. And thank you for inviting me. This is actually probably my first school meeting of all time. So this has been enlightening and very informative. I feel like I should spend more time at the Coventry schools. You guys have great nurses. So, and then congratulations, Mr. Sands, it sounds like. So welcome. That sounds very exciting. So I work with a company, Upcycle Collaborative. We are actually based out of Coventry. We, as some of you know, we do the curbside pickup for Coventry as well. And yes, we did notice that there were some bins that were that had left the schools, but we had also noticed the bins were collecting a little bit of trash. We drive by the schools kind of on a daily basis due to the routes and due to the fact that we're in Coventry. And actually, it's sort of funny. Some of our workers were curious about the bins. We're trying to figure out why there was trash around there. And we did see that perhaps their drivers weren't picking up everything that was necessary inside the bins, which maybe didn't make it so helpful for the folks, for the clothes themselves. And maybe that's why they couldn't continue. But anyways, we're excited to help out. We prefer to give back to schools. We prefer to give back to towns the best we can. And we were curious if you were interested in having upcycled collaborative clothing bins. We're excited to continue the recycling of clothes, and we would be very happy to be able to provide monetary donations directly from our revenue to you all. Let me think here. It sounds like you're used to quarterly, but with the town, we do give monthly. So I guess that's totally up to you folks, how you might want to receive funds. Is there anything else that I should perhaps explain, or any questions I certainly haven't asked yet that you'd like me to ask?
I would suggest that we let the committee members just ask questions, and we'll go from there.
All right, absolutely.
All right, thank you. So Mr. Pearson, do you have any questions for Upcycle and Mr. Robichaud?
Thank you for joining, Mr. Robichaud. Not a lot of questions. I think I would be encouraged. You've articulated a lot of the issues we're experiencing with the Goodwill bins, accumulating some trash outside the bins, not necessarily being picked up on schedule. I think the COVID pandemic certainly didn't help the issue. You know, there was probably staffing issues and other concerns with the pickups. So I'm encouraged that you're a local company, you're in town. So hopefully that would mean that these kind of issues, would be more swiftly, taken care of moving forward. So this is definitely an idea I'm open to. It was nothing against Goodwill, but I was becoming concerned, especially, at the high school where I was most often, and Hopkins Hill, which is closer to my home. With the previous problems we were having, it was just becoming an eyesore and a safety hazard with the accumulation. So anything you can do to help us, I'm definitely open to hearing more about and seeing a proposal come forward.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you. Great, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian, any questions, comments?
Yes, actually, I do. How are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Where do you take the goods after you collect them? Where are they? Beg
So
your
the
pardon?
goods, I said, oh, sure, no worries.
Oh.
So the goods, they all travel to our hub, which is next to the center of New England. And then from there, there's a trailer that comes from Texas, and then all the clothes go in there, and then they head off to outside the US.
Okay,
That's
so they go
essentially
to
the process. Yeah.
so they go to individuals in need.
100%. So typically, the market right now that we're working with are folks in Mexico.
And is there anything in particular that they need more than other things?
Oh, sure. What's being asked, as you may know, Mexico doesn't always get super cold, so they don't always need large parkas. But then of course, in different parts in the mountainous areas, they would ask for that. But typically, it's any kind of clothing and shoes. Those are the big ones. They don't really need toys. They don't need toys are really something that they don't really ask for. But it's primarily clothing, jeans, shorts, shirts, et cetera, and shoes. Yep.
And shoes. What about like, say, I wanted to buy a package of socks and throw them in there. Could I do that?
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I need.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Murray.
Hi, Brett. So first, let me say I do appreciate your partnership with the town, and I think your organization's mission is appreciated by myself and others, obviously. However, I will tell you that I'm a little resident on adding bins to the schools, and ultimately it's not me as a single member might call, but I've seen the trash outside the bins throughout town. I don't think that Goodwill anticipated having to pick up the trash either. And I'm not going to say that they didn't anticipate it. I think there's a lot of bad actors who quite honestly throw mattresses and TVs, and it's very difficult to control. I work in a city where I was approached by a councilman very recently to pass an ordinance against these bins throughout the city because it's a common problem. So my first question is, what makes you different, and what is your preventative measures to go down a different road? And if that trash ends up there, how quickly is it removed?
Oh, 100%. Those are great questions. And those are actually the questions that are typically raised. And they're major concerns, not just for everyone else, but actually for us as a company. Our biggest obstacle are actually the competitors, typically because they don't pick up the trash in a timely fashion. And that accumulates, and that becomes an eyesore, and that becomes a problem for everyone. And so our biggest probably asset that we have is that we're actually located in Coventry. We run the routes already for the town of Coventry, which is pretty much the same as the recycling and trash routes. So we're always there every day going by the schools. We are a bit of a stickler when it comes to getting trash and keeping the bins clean, because that's a big process of actually helping people to donate. We also noticed that if you, well, we've seen through competitors, if you allow people to throw something to the side of it, like a TV or a mattress, and you decide not to do it, that becomes like the okay marker for other people to do it as well. So it's a major concern for us. Our process is to get it done and quickly and take care of it early on, hands down. And when it comes to ordinances, we actually prefer towns to have ordinances because we pay the ordinances, and it typically combats the bad actors that we've been seeing. So our goal is to become the trusted source that people can rely upon in the state of Rhode Island, and we can avoid these problems from happening. Does that answer your questions?
Well, it does. So if a mattress or TV shows up at these bins,
they go in the van.
For what I'm hearing is you'll be there within a day and you'll take the expense of removing.
100%. Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be done that way. That's how you stay responsible. It must be done.
So I guess the other question that goes through my mind is we already have a program where I believe you pass out pink bags and we are able to put it out, and you've worked with our town to pick up those materials, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see your market? Like, I mean, is this just an expansion you're thinking of the existing?
Oh, sure.
Where you have families coming to the schools, obviously the residents of town, so they should already have access to these bags.
Yeah.
Right. So do you anticipate a large quantity of clothes outside of that venue that we already have? Or are we just competing markets?
So what we see is, so we've accepted the responsibility of picking up the pink bags. We actually have the green bags in the town of Coventry. So what we've seen is that could be a future. But in the end, on average, based on the census, people are throwing away about 50 to 70 pounds of personal clothing per year that end up in the waste stream. And so our numbers aren't actually close to that across the US, really, for people donating clothes and recycling the clothes. So there's no doubt that even with the curbside pickup, that the bins are still collecting clothes that may not otherwise be put at the curbside. Of course, we're trying to figure out why that is, but that seems to be the case.
And believe me, I'm not asking the questions, you know, I think it's an altruistic mission. I think you're doing a great job in a market. I agree. There's way too many textiles thrown out. But what I don't want to do, and this comes into Jason Martin, our physical plant, I do not want us to expend any of our resources, our critical resources.
100%.
Exactly what the superintendent had already said, right? Going out and having to pick up clothes, and it's counterproductive to what we need to be doing, right? We're maybe taking a little bit of money in at the school level, but we're expending resources on physical plant and maintaining these, and also the presentation of our schools. So, I mean, I guess I'd be willing to, from my perspective, put it on a trial basis, right? Allow feedback from our facilities director and have him report back in 3 to 6 months to say, this is working out much better than a Goodwill has, or we're back in a similar situation, the costs far exceed the benefits. So that's just my perspective on it. But I certainly appreciate your mission and your goals here.
100%. I mean, so my perspective on this is our goal is to make sure you guys don't have to expend any resources. The biggest resource that might take some time is if you see something that looks like it's out there, is to just call me or call Zach, the other owner, and it gets picked up within the hour.
Okay.
We don't even want you really doing that because we should already be out there taking care of it. But that would be the situation.
All right. I'll hold you to that.
You can hold it. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
Thank you, Brett, for the presentation. I find it very encouraging, and I know exactly what's been going on with Goodwill, because Goodwill hasn't been in our church, and I could not put the clothes that I wanted to into the bin because it was so full of stuff that I ended up going to Salvation Army and down the street and gave it to them. I'm hopeful, and I think I like your mission. I like what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to putting my clothes into one of your bins. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I don't have much more to add, Mr. Robichaud, except to say that I'm all for recycling. I've been a recycler from way back. It's part of my mission as a person on the planet. So anything we can do and also make a little money for our schools, I'm all for. Even if it wasn't to make money, I think it's a very worthy cause. I think I was at the presentation at Town Hall when the green bags are, I think it was originally pink.
It was originally pink. There was
yeah.
a different company that unfortunately didn't fulfill their end of the bargain. So
didn't work out. I see. But it's a
Coventry
worthy,
knew us and called us. Yes.
so it's a worthy cause, and the fact that you're in town and this is part of your town as well. I truly believe you will fix some of the problems we've had with the Goodwill bins. And at the very least, you'll be there, like you say, you do the routes anyway, so you'll see if someone's done something irresponsible and starts to pile stuff up, because that's obviously not something we want to continue. So if you bring us back a proposal, maybe with a picture of what your bin looks like.
Oh yes,
and,
exciting. Good.
All that good stuff, and Mr. Levis can present it to us, and we'll take a vote on it. But I think it's great, and I wish you luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you're going to be excited about how the bins look. They're getting rewrapped by
Good.
vinyl this week, so it's exciting for us.
Wonderful. All right, sounds good. I will open it up to the public if anybody has any questions. I'll give it a second or so. I don't see any hands up, so I'm sorry.
Can I just ask one more question, please?
Sure.
We didn't really talk any costs. I don't know, what is your typical cost share? I mean, what type of revenue are we actually talking? I know it's difficult to predict, but is there a common sort of split ballpark?
Well, let's see here. So with at the current moment, and of course it's been interesting with COVID and everything, and a new program. I was doing some data. The town of Coventry, because we have those bins on the Greenway, and we do the curbside recycling, they get close to $270, $300 a month.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's good to know, just as a heads up.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We look forward to your proposal. And we'll definitely be hasty in our decision-making. So
Well,
just bring
great.
it forward to Mr. Levis, and we'll take it from there.
Very appreciative. Thank you, Mr. Levis, for having me here, and congratulations to everyone for
Thank
being
you.
part of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, so I guess we're up to agenda item number 10, which is the draft school calendar, which was our reference number 3.
I don't think we're at.
Mrs. Patton,
Oh, no.
we
Oh,
missed 9.
Yeah, it's 9. Oh, I should never cross it off until it's done.
It's not that.
I was looking and I saw, yeah. Anyway, I was taken off task. So it's the F-22 budget discussion and the review of capital. So Mr. Levis.
Yes, so, again, I know somebody said Mr. Sands, baptism by fire, but honestly, and Mr. Coward can testify to this, that told Harold to relax, take his time. I mean, I don't know. I've been in education 35 years and I've worked with a lot of people and great individuals, but I think, I don't know if I've met anybody. Again, he's extremely driven, passionate, committed, and but I want him to last a long time. So I've told him just to relax. And, again, we're very blessed that Sarah is also working with us. They spent a lot of time today. I need to make sure they're on the same page so that when Harold and I meet, that we're on the same page. So it's like I have a dream team to work with, outside of all of my other colleagues here. So anyways, so I'm going to do some slides to kind of give you a perspective of where we are right now as of March 25th with the budget. At the end of the presentation, and I posted this up on our website along with the updated budget documents that I shared with the committee, and I'll share this with the committee as soon as we're done. But this was a work in progress today, even up to a few hours ago. So we're going to talk about at the end. I'm going to ask that we have a budget workshop on April 8th. I know it's not something that we had originally scheduled, but I'll send out and I can address that with the individual committee members after this meeting. I think with Mr. Sands on board, it'll give an opportunity for us to come back to you. One of the areas that we're going to be focused on this year is staffing, and I really want to have our department heads, I think Mr. Pearson had talked about it before, want to have our building principals and our directors to come before you and really, talk about the personnel, and I think that would be important. And also still working on that, the capital list to make sure that we have the visuals with it in priority, and we'll bring that back on that date also. So I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So these are, as of today, right now, what's driving our FY22 budget. And, first of all, we're coming out of a pandemic, and that means so much in terms of, what we've been through, what we need to prepare for, what our needs are, how do we assess those needs, and how do we address those needs moving forward. Something that we really need to take into consideration coming off of a level funded year. Ms. Mandrielli did a presentation maybe a month and a half ago where we showed in the past those 6 years that we were basically level funded and the impact that has. And I think that's something that Mr. Sands and I spoke a lot about in the last couple of days, recognizing what that means for us moving forward. But despite everything, we need to focus on accelerating learning and growth, right? That's just not academic. We need to focus on the social emotional. We hear that all the time. We've put forward our best thinking every single day, and we reflect and we revise every single day in terms of, what are we doing? How's it addressing the needs of our students, our families, and our staff? What we really need to look at, moving forward, starting in the summer, how are we going to address those needs? And then, as I just said, addressing the needs of our students, families, and staff. And I know it's kind of a cliche with me, but I always, no matter what's going on, I always try to keep that laser beam focus on what's in the best interest of students. There's so much noise that's going on just in the world, but we have our own little brand of noise here in Coventry. So these are the things that are really driving our budget. Key points as of today. So one of the things you'll notice is that on March 11th, RIDE put out data that showed we will get a 3% increase in our state aid. So remember, we go into this what our budget deficit was. And so now we're going to increase our revenue by 3%. But you'll see the little disclaimer in the bottom. We're still not sure exactly how they're going to handle the changes in student enrollment, how they're going to handle the changes with the free and reduced lunch numbers because nobody's had to put in applications, how they're going to take into consideration the increase in homeschool students. While we have a very rich homeschool community, we noticed an increase of 70 some odd 80 families this year. So that all impacts our budget. How's RIDE going to take that in consideration? So we're optimistically cautious, but there is an increase in $624,000. We can talk about this a little bit later, but we need to request a 4% increase in local appropriations. Well, there's money that we're expecting to receive. In another slide, I'll discuss what that amount is. At least we've been told the ESSER 2 funds, but these are one-time funds. We know that the president, and that's President Trump's funding, President Biden's funding will be probably double that. And again, when these monies are expended, which is by September, the President Biden's funds, the American Recovery Plan funds, those have to be spent by September 30th, 2023. So at the end of the day, we still have to look at what that level funding has done to us moving forward. So the increases in salaries are contractual increases, and then the additional staffing to address learning loss, social emotional needs. There's been conversation about some of the COVID staff that we put on this year. And we need to look at what staff do we need moving forward. I've been clear that I can't see us moving backwards in terms of our custodial staff. That, and we're not even at the level that we were at, many years ago. So even though we put on additional staff for sanitation and cleanliness, we had many more custodians, 10 years ago. Anticipate increases in expenditures, again, due to out-of-district tuition. We know that our transportation contract is increasing this year. And then purchase service increase, really around the instructional support software. And if people have questions about that later on, Don can answer that a little bit more. Current projected recurring operating budget deficit of $1,818,505. And this doesn't include the maintenance costs required. It's 2.5% next year. From that point on, it'll be 3%. So remember, this is the amount that we had asked for this year. We were level funded. When those funds are expended, and like I said, by September 30th of 2023, this is the deficit that we're going to have if we don't figure out, how we can get this community to support education, and also looking at other strategies for us in terms of our current expenditures. So this is just a summary of the changes in revenue and expenditures as of today. So we talked about the state aid. We're still seeking the 4% from the town. And I want to be clear. I know there's been comments, people have informed me that, I'm making statements about there won't be cuts. We've met with every single director. We've met with every single building administrator. I always say budgeting is every single day of the week. I'm sure that Harold and myself and Mr. Cowart will have conversations every single day about the budget. So looking at ways that we can reduce expenditures, ways that we can increase revenue, those are daily. And this 4%, we know that we're going to need 4% next year. But 4%, our goal is to work with the town. There's a new town manager coming on board. We have a new director of finance. Mr. Sands and myself met with Mr. Wazika and Mrs. Mills, Harold's first day on the job. So our plan is to open that dialogue, continue that communication, and find strategies for us so that we can work together to effectively fund both the town and the schools. We've accounted for a decrease in Medicaid based on information we know. And then I put in here COVID funds, but these are, again, one-time funds. So expenditures, we've discussed, we have an increase in out-of-district tuitions. I've talked about salaries. We talked about the transportation contracts, purchase service. One of the areas that we're looking at doing is not put COVID funds into our general fund, but how can we use COVID funds appropriately by removing line items from our general fund. So here's some strategies and methods to address the FY22 proposed budget gap. Again, and we talked about this before, the use of the fund balance of $700,000. The concern was that it brings it down to about $24,000. Shifting Chromebook purchases. So these are the purchases that we were going to get a lease on from for grades 6 to 12. We can shift that to COVID funds. So what that does is it'll pull that line item out of the general fund, but it would also pull it out for those 3 years of payments. So we're currently including a revenue line item for COVID fund allocation. If you have questions, I think Harold might be able to explain that a little bit more of his thinking moving forward. So ultimately, we talk about moving expenditures out of the general fund into COVID funds. Some of these areas would be staff to support social emotional needs, staff for achievement gap reduction and intervention, which is appropriate use of these funds. Custodians. We know that we cannot decrease the level of custodians. You know, there's no, I believe that we cannot justify not keeping our buildings clean and sanitized. We put registered nurses on here because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, we'll talk later on about our plan to fully reopen, but I also have to state that right now we know that Germany, France, and Italy are locked down. And we're hoping that the vaccination that's taking place in our United States and that movement towards herd immunity will prevent us from having setbacks. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that that's a potential. And if that happens, we'll need the support of our COVID nurses. And then substitutes. So we mentioned before the COVID stimulus. So the ESSER 2 funds, I think it's about $2,419,000. But remember, a portion of that we have to give to our private schools. And so I assume that that number will be somewhere around $250,000. But we do not know exactly what, and again, the other piece is we don't know exactly when we'll have access to this $2.4 million. We were told that we had $740,000 with the previous ESSER funds back in the summer of 2020. We weren't able to get, I think, even utilize those funds and apply for them till like October and November. So I know there's concern, or people are asking, well, you have $2.4 million. I don't believe we'll even have access to that to this year in FY 2021. So the next steps, Harold and I will be working with Ms. Mandrelli, putting a presentation together. We have a joint budget workshop with the town council. We'll make sure that we share that presentation with you prior to the council, and any feedback that the committee has, you can share with myself and Harold. I mentioned earlier, April 8th, the budget workshop with building administrators and directors to discuss staffing. Again, I think it's important for you to have the opportunity to ask questions like we ask questions of our principals, of our directors, to look at our needs and how we're going to utilize the staff. What we don't want to do, and many of you, I don't know if you were around when the ARA funds came out many, many years ago, and a lot of times districts they had this incredible amount of money to spend. And I remember I was a district, like many districts, that bought these iPads. Apple was pushing them, they had deals. We found that the life expectancy of these iPads, we spent maybe $300,000 on iPads. And they lasted 18 months because they had built-in batteries that you couldn't replace. And so we scrambled to spend money. We need to use these funds strategically, recognizing that they're one-time. You know, part of the American Recovery Act or American Recovery Plan is to make sure that cities and towns are also receiving funds. And it was to make sure that there are no massive layoffs, that we can provide the staffing and the supports, and recognizing that we're coming out of a pandemic. But we also need to, again, stress that at the end of these funds, we're back to working with the community and the funding that we receive from both the state and the taxpayers. And then finally, we'll also be able to present the capital list prioritized with visuals. I think that was an excellent suggestion in prioritizing, so we can go back and then have any more questions. And this would be again on the 8th. So I will share this again with the committee. It's posted on our website. And with that, I will turn it back to Ms. Patnode, and I see Harold chomping on the bit here. So when feel free to jump in, Harold, when the questions are asked. But feel free to say nothing also.
All right, thank you so much. So Mr. Pearson, comments, questions?
Comment and question in one. Looking at the homeschool data where we did see, you know, a number of new families homeschooling during the pandemic. What we don't understand right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be good to know for planning purposes for the start of the school year, we don't know how many of those were just decisions to take during the pandemic with, you know, parents. Do they fully intend to put their children back in public schools or not? So my question, I guess, is are we taking some sort of initiative to reach out to those families to understand what their intentions are in the fall?
Yeah. So my answer to that is I think we can reach out and ask if they plan on coming back. We have to be careful. But we can definitely do that. Have we done that? No. I think what we're looking at is that when we look at our average for homeschool, and we looked at this year, we see that the spike was, say it was, I believe, somewhere around 78 additional families, because we have families move. And so the assumption we make is that those families, and I have spoken to maybe a third of those families that have said they've had the time this year that they were going to homeschool for this year, because one of the parents might have been home and they decided to, for consistency's sake. But we can definitely reach out. It's just, I think we're limited. I can basically ask, do you plan on returning to the school next year? So have we done that yet? No, but that's a great point, and we can definitely do that. I can work with Ms. Martin and we can create something and, you know, contact those families.
And we're going to be establishing contact with them anyways, because at the end of the year, there's some documentation due to the school district to sort of verify that they completed the homeschool programming that they completed. And so when that happens, I think that's an opportunity to do what Mr. Pearson is suggesting and just kind of reconnecting and getting a sense of what their plans are for next year.
Yeah, and if I remember the data correctly, which I may not, so someone correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember the data, a lot of the new homeschool families were in the earlier grades. So again, just you know,
yeah.
what I am concerned about is, you know, it's a twofold problem. You know, if they remain in homeschool, you know, RIDE may give us a pass on the enrollment numbers this year, but then we have another issue to deal with next year if they are continuing to homeschool. The other issue is if we understaff and all of a sudden we have an influx of 80 families saying, yes, we're coming back to school, and we're not prepared for that. So just being prepared for what's coming ahead. Other than that, looking forward to the workshop with the council on April 1st. So thank you for the advanced information before we get to that point.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian?
I don't have anything at this time. I am also looking forward to working with the town council on the 1st. I may not make the 8th, but I'll definitely make the 1st.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
So I have a lot of comments and questions, but I will reserve a bulk of them for the work session because I think it's more appropriate. I'm interested, actually, Mr. Sands, you've obviously had a chance to look at some of the budget and we haven't heard from you. I would be interested in your general take on where you think we're at right now. Just give you the floor for a moment to comment.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. I have spent some time with the budget with as many people as I possibly can. One of the things I do want to state before I get into the actual what thoughts are the budget is that I haven't done the deep dive to really understand where all the numbers are. That being said, I think what Coventry faces is a structural deficit of $1.8 million based off of the level of funding that occurred last year. And one of the problems that you also face at this point is that you have this influx of funds coming in from COVID. Now, those funds that are coming in from COVID will amount to quite a bit of money. And you have to be very clear in developing a picture of where those funds are going to be used, what your actual budget is, and then how those two combine together to create to help the deficit that you currently have. But at the same time, making sure that everybody understands that there is a structural deficit, and that is, in my mind, the key to this whole thing, and making it simple to understand. And that's what I'm working with Sarah to do is COVID. You have a COVID structure, you have the actual school structure that has to go forward going into the future, and then how do these two work together? And I think that because too much can be put on the COVID funds to get us out of this deficit that we're facing, and not enough of it is looked at from a structural deficit. And that to me is the key to making a clear, concise presentation. And I'm working very closely with everybody in the building as well as Sarah to see if we can put that together before possibly the 1st, but absolutely by the 8th.
I appreciate the input, and actually, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was actually going to mention, I was reading a GFOA article, a Government Finance Officers Association article, that specifically issued guidance to cities and towns: do not use this money to shore up operational budgets. Use it as that one-time funding. However, if you want to use it to bend the cost curve in the future, and I always make the analogy, if as a homeowner, right, if I get an influx of funds, I don't go buy a new car, I insulate my home because I'm going to recoup energy savings over the duration, right? And that same sort of, but communicating that to the public, because the public's going to see this influx of funds. And they can say, well, why are you levying more money on us, or why are you levying more taxes? Because you're getting all this federal money, right? Aren't you in a good situation? And I think it's going to be very difficult to communicate to people, especially we have to look backwards to last year because it's part of the narrative when the state cut us around $900,000, which was out of our, out of our control. They had already cut us 900,000. We had already made reductions, and then we got zero. We got level funded, so that compounded. So it's always difficult to look back because no one wants to hear about it, and but I'm really looking forward to how you are able to help us create that narrative, because I think it's important. It's not a PR campaign, it's information and how you effectively communicate that. In addition to that, and I don't know how we deal with this, but the first time we're actually addressing the maintenance and this mandate 16/7/23, which is we have to set aside 2.5% of our operational budget for capital. How we even communicate that, like, this is something we haven't done, now we need to do it. That narrative may change if this building effort moves forward. We may be able to count some of that. We may even be able to count some of this COVID funding toward that. I'm sure we can, because capital expenditures are a one-time expense typically. So that definitely helps, but I'll have a lot more questions going forward, but I appreciate your viewpoints on this, and I think you have hit the nail on the head where we've got to figure out how to communicate this in the intersection of the operations versus that one-time funding. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio?
Madam Chair, I'm like Miss Kaloulian. I'd like to wait until the meeting on with the council on April 1st, so it gives me more time to look at it. and in order to educate myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I don't have any questions per se, but I am interested in the strategy we're going to use to relate not only to the town side, but also to our citizens, how structural deficits work and why they have been so, why we've found ourselves in this predicament. It's been several years in the making. And there's this, I do believe there's this feeling from our citizens that somehow we're making it. You know, we were level funded, but we're making it. You know, we haven't shut down schools. And that is, you know, not, that's fallacy, and it's not good vision for what we need to basically do as a community. And to not raise taxes and continue to think that maybe even next year we won't have to raise taxes either because we're getting all this federal money is like going to be the kiss of death for this community. And we will find ourselves on another cliff, just like we found ourselves when we were level funded because of the funding formula, and we were a winning community, and we got, you know, $600,000, $700,000 every year that made us able to balance our budget with zero money from the tax base. But ultimately that goes away. And when it went away, and even though the Department of Ed warned us all, and even this committee, because I've been on this committee for a while, we tried to make that point over and over to former town councils that sooner or later we were going to hit the cliff. You know, it's going to happen. You have to give some money from the tax base because federal money is not going to make it work, and extra money on a funding formula, unless you can back it up with the tax revenue, is going to be the kiss of death for a school department. And so I'm hoping that there's enough foresight and vision on both sides of you know, both the town and the school committee to understand that structural deficits are very meaningful and they do not go away unless you back it up with taxes, as simple as that. So I'm looking forward to, you know, more on this whole presentation that we're going to actually be giving to the town council on the 1st of April. And I thank you for your work with Sarah and with the rest of the administrative team to come forward with, you know, whatever we do in fact present. So I thank you for that work. Other than that, I do not have any follow-ups, and I do not see any hands raised.
We don't have any hands.
Okay. Anything finally from anybody on this call?
Again, I want to say, I think you got just a sample of Mr. Sands, and, you know, I think we've presented the past, you know, it's easy for me to look at the data just in that slide that Ms. Mandrelli had presented, going back and seeing typical, you know, average level funding. And, you know, we've tried a lot of different things. I know in my short time here, and, you know, I think we're going to, you know, pull out all the stops. I do believe the language that's used, you know, Dr. Dixon's rule of engagement, we've got to stick to that. And we've got to make sure, you know, I'm very optimistic with the conversations I've had, that when we've had the opportunity to have public conversations with the council, whether it's in, you know, whatever type of meeting we're in, I'm very impressed, and great questions are asked. So I think, you know, we've always talked about one town and working together, but it hasn't happened. And I'm hopeful, and I truly, not just hopeful, I know we're going to do everything on our power, and I believe the council will, for us to work together to get the funding that we need over time and to have a strategy as a town. You know, to say that people just can't afford it and to be level funded is kicking the can down the road and down a hill and into a swamp and into quicksand. And, you know, we just can't, we can't do that anymore. And so I know we'll fight, because the kids are worth it. Our staff, you know, our employees are worth it, that you know, worked every single day. And so I think you have a commitment from us. I know we have a commitment from you. And you know, I'm excited about it. You know, I'm going to be pulling parents together that have been identified as champions next week, either next week or the following week, I'm sorry, after Easter, and just trying to strategize. And again, going to try to do the things that are different than we've done before, than I've done at least. But I'm excited. I think you see again, Mr. Sands and Sarah working together is a formidable, team, and I wouldn't want to go against them. So I think the only one I have on staff that would think about it is Mr. Cowart. So anyways, I just want to thank Harold for coming on and thank the committee for your feedback. And we have a lot of work to do, Harold. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Levis. So true, so true. I always remain optimistic. You have to. If you've been on school committee 18 years, going on 19, you have to remain optimistic. Otherwise, I would have quit a long time ago. So thank you to everyone and all the players involved. Moving on to what I tried to move on to previously, which is agenda item number 10, the draft of our school calendar, which was our reference number 3. I assume, Mr. Levis, that you want to let us
I'm
know
going
the
to
ins and
defer
outs
to
of
Mr.
this?
Cowart.
Oh, Mr. Cowart, okay.
See, he worked with many people on the calendar, so I want to give
So
him the credit.
I'll have to thank Mrs. Martin right off the top because she formatted the calendar with the appropriate months and years and everything else. This year was interesting, similar to last year. Rhode Island Department of Education actually provided a statewide calendar with some professional days built in. The original calendar that they had given us front-loaded a number of days, similar to what they did this year. If you recall, we started school September 14th, and they had front-loaded a few days before that start date. With this year, they tried to front-load 2 days, but what ended up happening is it pushed our start date to after Memorial Day on the 7th and 8th, I think, for our kindergarten kids. Because if you recall, we do a slow start for pre-K and K. We have our grades 1 through 12 kids start right in on the first day of school. And then we have a slow start because we do an assessment with the parents and with the kids. And then we use that to put the classrooms together to make sure they're balanced. Well, with the original calendar that RIDE had given us and then front loading those professional development days, it had us starting school for the K and pre-K students on the Jewish holidays. Because even though we don't take them on our calendar, we still have people in our community that celebrate those holidays. And we didn't think it was fair or appropriate to start school for anybody, whether they're pre-K, K, or 1 through 12 on a Jewish holiday. So we pushed back with RIDE along with a number of districts. So RIDE came out with a Schedule B, a Calendar B. And so that's what's in front of you. What we took on was Calendar B, which is they distributed those 2 front-loaded PD days and put them in the end of September and the end of October. So you'll see in September and October, there's 2 professional days that got distributed. And then there's 2 more professional development days, one in March and one in May. So those are statewide days, meaning that there are days that count towards the 180. So kids are going to have a virtual learning day, and then our teachers are going to be participating in professional development. And they are statewide so that if there are things being offered from Department of Ed or other agencies connected to the Department of Ed, people from multiple districts can participate. So it's I actually think it's a nice angle to kind of help grow, not just the people in Coventry, our teachers in Coventry, but to have them collaborate with people outside of Coventry. And then after that, we just did what we do every year. We run it by Kelly and the CTA. We run it by Tammy and the SRP to make sure that we're not missing anything in terms of what's contractually obligated. Everybody signed off on what you see in front of you. The only thing that's probably going to be added that will come back in front of you, maybe for a second vote, is we're working with Denise Ahern to do some pre-K early release days that are required with the state pre-Ks that we have at Washington Oak. We don't have that ironed out yet, and I didn't want to hold this up because I think it was supposed to be on the agenda last time and it got tabled. So we decided to put this in front of you, and everything's on there, including the early release for the high school. It's just the pre-K days that are going to have to get circled back on.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Cowart. I'll just go around and see if anybody has any questions. Mr. Pearson, anything?
No questions. Thank you.
Great. Mrs. Kalunian, here you are. Any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
You're good? All right. Mr. Murray?
No questions.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Florio?
No questions.
Great. Okay, then I think we can move on this. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the draft school calendar for 2021 to 2022 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask the public if anyone has any questions or concerns about this. I assume this is going to be posted on our site, if not already. Okay. I don't see any hands up, Mr. Murphy. Is that correct?
That is
All
correct.
right, then could we have a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Martin?
Catherine Patino,
Yes?
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 11, the elementary school handbook, including the student discipline code discussion and vote, which was our reference number 4. And Mr. Levis, did you want to start this? I'm not sure exactly who.
I want to thank Mr. Pearson, Dr. Dixon, Amy Anzalone, who met with us several times in the elementary principals, Mr. Cowart, I'm sure had a little bit to do with this also. I just want to thank them. This has been, I think, a lot of work this year. I really feel good. I think, we need to come back in a few short months with next year's handbooks. And I think that, that should be an easy lift for everybody because of the work. So I don't know, Mr. Pearson, if you want to add to that, but, again, Mr. Pearson and Dr. Dixon do most of the work in the committee. I have to say that I'm there at all the meetings, but they put a lot of time and effort in not only prepping for the meetings, but during the meeting itself. And we've had about, 110 meetings. We're supposed to have one today. I ended up canceling before we even posted it. So, but I can't imagine what we'd be without them. So.
That's really wonderful work. Mr. Pearson, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
I've stopped counting the number of meetings, just for the record. No comments. Great work by the elementary principals and staff putting this together and revising it. They did a little bit more of an extensive formatting revision than the other handbooks, and the other principals aren't going to want to hear this, but I kind of like the format, so I'd like to see this pushed up to the middle school and high school next year, if possible.
Yeah, I think it seems like it's a really nice format and will automatically be updated. Mr. Coward, did you, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing because I talked to Mrs. Anzalone often, and the original handbook, which I helped work on when I was a principal and then the director, was a simple Word document converted to a PDF, and that was pretty much it. What Mrs. Anzalone has created and with the rest of the elementary principals put forward is something that's definitely more robust and interactive and easily navigable, if that's a word. You can navigate it through in a few different ways. So I have to thank her publicly because that was a big lift for her. It was something she had not done before, and the final product is excellent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just really outstanding. Mrs. Colonian, did you have any questions?
No, I also wanted to comment on the format. I think it's so easy to read, and I'm going back years from when my kids had it, and I that thing was like atrocious. So this is perfect. This is really, I like it, and I hope that you can, maybe push that towards the middle school and high school next year, because it's really a great format. And give Miss Anzalone, if she's on, kudos. Very, very nice job.
Thank you, Mrs. Colonian. Mr. Murray.
Never underestimate the power of good formatting and live links in a PDF document. Now, I appreciate the time and effort. The content's one thing. A lot of people overlook the formatting, but I think just having a table of contents where you can click where you need to be, or you can click on a name and send an email means a lot in this day and age. So I appreciate the time and effort that went into that. Thanks to the policy committee, the subcommittee that worked on this, and all the administration that worked on this. I think it's great. Good stride forward.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And Mr. Florio.
Great work. Thank you. It's nice to have a concise handbook after all these years, Madam Chair. I mean, it's easy to read. Everybody said everything. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with all the comments. When I looked at it and realized the power of formatting, it really makes all the difference. And so my heartfelt thanks for everyone who worked on this, and great job. So I think we're ready to make a motion on approval. Is there a motion?
Can I just
Madam
say that?
Chair,
the
Oh, I'm
motion-
sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Floyd, I didn't mean to cut you off, but the motion is wrong in the long agenda.
Yeah,
I
yeah, we'll
apologize,
make it.
I didn't
We'll
catch
make
that.
it. I didn't catch it either, but I think we can make it reflect the handbook instead of the draft calendar.
Well, the handbook, including student discipline code.
Yes, yes.
Presented / amended. Okay.
So, Mr. Florio, are you ready?
yes, I am. Madam Chair, I
Okay.
make a motion to approve the elementary school handbook, including student discipline code for the calendar year 2021 to 2022 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Yes, Craig.
Okay.
Are you okay, Mr. Levis?
You sure?
Oh, you're on mute.
No, I
but-
apologize. I was thinking we're in 2020. So where's time going?
Okay. And before I call for a roll call vote, I don't see any questions from the public. So I don't see any hands up, correct?
There are none.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right, so could we have a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Martin?
Catherine Patnode,
Yes.
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you all. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to number 12, the school building committee update. I believe that's yours, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, so just keep it brief. So we're continuing to meet every other Tuesday as a building committee. We have not received any comments back from RIDE yet, although we do expect something soon. And the architect said one of the questions that we need to work on, which we will have a meeting on, is displacement of students. Should we move forward with the building bond? And if we move forward with the construction of a new middle school, where do we place those students while that building would be constructed? It's a great question, one we need to answer. We had some preliminary options as part of the stage 2 package. We need to continue to meet with staff to determine a more a refined option to ensure that RIDE is clear on our plan moving forward. Two other things that have been going on. One is we've been meeting with potential advertising firms or PR firms, or whatever you want to call it, to get the information out to the public. We're continuing that effort. We did meet with one the other night at our building committee meeting. We're still working on that to procure somebody and expect to do so soon. In the meantime, we've been meeting with the leadership on both sides, the town and the schools. Ms. Patnode has joined me along with Council President Dixon, Council Member Ludwig, Craig Levis, the town manager, to all, and actually the finance directors, to kind of come to some consensus on how we move forward, because obviously all this hinges on the council moving forward a proposal for a bond, and that needs to have enabling legislation during this session. So we are meeting to kind of work through the numbers, having a thoughtful discussion and doing due diligence. We had a meeting scheduled today, which got bumped to tomorrow. Well, we'll be meeting with Steve Massaroni, who's from PFM, the town's financial advisor, to walk us through the numbers on what the impact would be of a bond, to ensure that we're all on the same page and thinking this through. So we're just trying to be thoughtful. I think all of us feel that we're not looking to hinge the town with unnecessary debt, but on the other hand, this is a great opportunity. We certainly want to take advantage of the reimbursements that are available. And we know that this issue is not going away, right? Capital our capital needs are great, and it's likely if we don't pay now, we're gonna pay later. So we're having that discussion, we've kind of, before we come back to the building committee, to ensure that, you know, we're gonna have some viable support in moving a bond forward. We don't want to put in a lot of effort to see this, you know, not move forward. So there's a lot going on, but if you have questions, specific questions related to the effort, certainly reach out to me directly, and I'll answer any questions that you have. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Are any of the committee members, do you have any questions? You can just raise your hand instead of me going to each one of you. We're good? Okay. Is there anybody in the public that has any questions about Mr. Murray's report? I don't see any hands raised.
There are none.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Again, thank you, Mr. Murray, for that update. And I guess we can move on to agenda item number 13, which is the FY21 budget update. So, Mr. Levis, is that you again?
That is me. I'm going to be brief, and what I wanted to really talk about tonight, just to inform the committee, is that you're aware that we had sent a letter to the town in regards to COVID funds. And about approximately 6 weeks ago, Ms. Patno and I attended a town council meeting. I thought the council asked some great questions. It was just a discussion. The expectation was the next town council meeting that a resolution would have been put together, and with, you know, the council had to vote on giving COVID funds to, you know, access to COVID funds. We asked for access up to, I think it's $941,066. And again, we sent that to the Auditor General as our corrective action plan. So the following meeting was, the topic was tabled because there was a resolution that was put forward for $500,000. But in that resolution, instead of, our request was from the reserves or rainy day funds, they, the resolution had been changed to 500,000, which, you know, we never asked for 500,000. And it also included COVID funds instead of rainy day funds. So it was tabled because we're told that they couldn't amend it higher. They could only amend it lower. That's what the town solicitor had shared. I'd reach out to Mr. Anderson to see if that was accurate, and, you know, he's not the town solicitor. So we did not go to that meeting. Fast forward the meeting on the 22nd, which was, I believe, this Monday night, correct? Past Monday night, I lose track of time. Attended a meeting, and the resolution was the 900 and, you know, the actual amount, and it had the COVID funds. And while we're at the meeting, because they also had the lease for the our vehicles, we were told that they had to table the discussion again because they could not use COVID funds to fund the school. That was for, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, but that was for emergency use on the town side. So I was under the impression, again, I plan on sending an email, and I will CC, or a letter, I'll BCC the school committee, and I will share with the town council president, and I will share with the town manager. But I would have expected to hear from somebody, because this is, you know, our last conversation was very positive, and I was expecting, and you know, I haven't heard from anybody, and I haven't reached out because I feel that, you know, it's the responsibility of the town manager or the council to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to address it. I have been asked, you know, well, you know, about our COVID funds, but I want to be clear. I have no expectation that we will have access to COVID funds in FY 2021, other than what we've already appropriated, expended. So I will draft a letter. I was going to do it today. I didn't have time. I will do it tomorrow. I will share that with the school committee. And again, I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that the council will put this forward. It was indicated in an email that we received, I believe, I think it was just Ms. Patno and myself, that said that, you know, they couldn't use the COVID funds, but they could use their reserves if the council so choose. I haven't received a confirmation or any notification that they weren't going to go forward. But again, I waited, I haven't heard, so I just want to inform you, that's where we stand. And once I get a response, I will share that with the school committee, because we don't know where we're going to stand. That what we put in as a request was a snapshot in time. You'll be seeing in the next agenda item, we're going to reopen schools. There's a plan for everybody to come back at a certain point in time, and I'll outline that. But we don't know what the additional expenses may be, so people want to focus on the money that we've saved, and I have to be clear, we've used our savings as part of operations. If we weren't level funded, our intent was to use that to fund COVID. So I just want to keep you informed of that whole process. It's 6 weeks now. My frustration is only that we've been offered, it's been dangled out there. I'll say that we will support you with COVID funds. And I believe this council, if given the opportunity to vote on it, again, I don't have a crystal ball, I do believe that they will support us. I just want to make sure it's going to go forward. So again, I don't mean to be long-winded about it, but I want you to understand that it does have an impact on our FY21 in our corrective action that we submitted to the Department of the Auditor General. So that's all I wanted to say, to keep you informed of where we're at. And I will share that letter that I draft tomorrow with you.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Are there any committee members that have questions? You can just raise your hand and for Mr. Levis. Just Mr. Murray. All right, go for it, Mr. Murray.
So I understand, I watched the first meeting with the 500,000. I understand the last meeting was modified to take it out of the COVID funds from the town, not the surplus. Your letter that you're planning to draft, what is exactly the thought or the request? Reiterating the request?
Just, I would have, again, I should not assume, but my expectations would be, because every time, the other 2 times I've been notified that this is what's going to take place, we'll put it on the next agenda. There has been no discussion. If you've watched the meeting, there's no opportunity for any discussion. It's just been tabled or, so my request, my email or my letter is going to ask, that it be put back on and that I receive some type of acknowledgement. Because my concern is that I don't want it just to hang out there and not be brought back to the council, because that puts us in a difficult position, because now we have to go back and identify another corrective action. So yes, I'm going to, just reiterate the original request and ask for confirmation that it'll be put back on the next town council meeting.
So, yeah, I share your concern. I mean, I guess, from my position, I'm frustrated because we've talked about open, the clarity of process, no games, the fact that we want to work together. Yeah. We made a simple request, put it on there, vote it up or down. Or if you want to amend it, you can amend it down, right? That's not playing games. So my suggestion would be, I know we don't typically do it, I think we should do it more, is putting together a simple resolution from the committee, meeting and passing that resolution and sending it across the street. To formally, as a committee, speak with one voice that we want to put on the docket, we want it voted up or down. I think it's a fair request. We need to back you in that. It shouldn't just always fall on you to write a letter. And I'm going to count on the council to do what they committed to do. And what we're committing to do is be open and transparent, put it on the docket, vote it up or down. What goes through my mind too is this, again, I go back to the maintenance funding, which hasn't been funded for the past couple of years, wasn't funded. That 400 and I'm trying to remember 86,000 or so ended up in our bank account, diverted from the state. This is one-time fund from surplus. They haven't even, I don't know where we sit on the 21 budget, and we're looking at 22 shortfall on capital too. So, even if we were to use some of that money, it may actually, depending on what we use it on, may actually short some of that diversion from the state, right? Because if we use it on building a capital request, and what they did this year was they just essentially let the diversion happen and took it out of surplus, and they didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I guess, and in my mind, it all relates. So it's a simple suggestion. If Mr. Anderson could help draft something quickly. I mean, I would recommend, you know, and I'm only one of 5, but that where we send something across the street with a, you know, a unified voice, which we should be doing, in my opinion. So that's all I have. And I don't know how other committee members feel about that. I'm looking for feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Pearson, how do you feel about doing a simple resolution, or can we just agree that Mr. Levis should write a letter? What's your feeling on that?
Well, it depends on what carries more weight, doesn't it? I'm open to doing a resolution if a letter is not sufficient. We'll probably know more April 1st, right? Well, no, this is previous year's budget. Sorry. No, we won't know more April 1st. You know, there's more time to do the letter while we prepare to do a resolution. So maybe we do both.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. I mean, I would ask you to allow me to send a letter, email, I mean, call it whatever we want, but at least to get it on the record. And then if you want to do a resolution, that's fine. But I feel that it's just, you know, again, and the council has not had a chance to discuss this, so I want to be clear that, and I don't believe they have. I believe any discussion could be construed as a rolling quorum, and I believe the council hasn't discussed it probably since we had our original meeting over 6 weeks ago. And so I do believe that the council, if given the opportunity, will support it. It's just, again, I don't know how the resolution, because that resolution that was written for the $500,000, I believe had the COVID funds in that. So, you know, I don't know who's guiding them in drafting the resolution and all that.
Well, and that's my point, though. It's really, we've already had 2 cracks of the apple to get it on the docket correctly, right? So apparently something is either not being communicated correctly to the administration, or the administration is just not putting it on. So by speaking as a school committee and formally requesting it, and I agree, again, a letter works, but apparently it hasn't worked, right? We've tried to informally ask them to put it on. It hasn't been put on. So, you know, I hate to force the heavy hand, but I think, you know, us speaking together and saying, please put this on for consideration. I agree with you, Craig. I don't think they've had a reasonable opportunity to actually entertain it as we would like it written on the docket.
Mhm.
And I think if they have the ability to do so, they'll make the appropriate decision. But that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mrs. Colonian, what's your feeling?
I agree with Luke. I think that, you know, we probably should be on the same page, all, you know, unified and do up a resolution. I do think that, you know, Craig can send his letter. We can do both. But yeah, I agree with Mr. Murray.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Florio.
We keep going around and around and around and around. And I think we should do both. I think that there's issues with some of the leadership, and they are blocking any attempt that we make to get funds or to reconcile our books. I don't know what's happening, but you have a united school committee, and the council wants to be united, but there seems to be some issues with the attorney and town manager with the attorney and the town manager that continues. I continue to be suspicious of the behavior. It's okay for certain departments to get 2.3 million for street sweepers and all kinds of equipment, but when it comes to the school department, they shut us right down. And it's almost personal in the way that they've been doing this. I mean, we've been discussing the budget for the last 3 years. I mean, and the meetings, we've been meeting almost weekly. That doesn't include the panel that James sits on. But it seems like someone's creating a lot of work and a lot of effort for others except themselves. So that's my frustration, Madam Chair, is that they just seem to be it's like a circle. It's like an endless circle. We keep going around and around and around. And some parents use the term Groundhog Day. And that seems to be what's going on here. And it doesn't matter who's on the council. It's Groundhog Day all over again. And it just the outcome never changes. So those are my feelings, Madam Chair. I wish I could be more optimistic.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. I think I concur with the committee members that a resolution can only help. I think we need to look at the dates because we're going to have to vote on that as a committee, which will mean either I'm not sure if we can wait till the next meeting of the school committee because ours might be after the next meeting of the town council. So I'd like to get that done. If we're going to do it, we should get it done and even call a special meeting just to approve the resolution. I think we have to look at the calendar perhaps, Mr. Levis, and figure that out. And then we should ask that it be put on the town council agenda and actually specify the date rather than saying we'd like it to be put on the dock because that could be, well,
Right.
of their choosing. So if we're going to do it, then I think it should have meat behind it. And we obviously as a committee have to meet and approve it. So we'll get back to you with some dates. Mr. Levis and I will work on that and see if we can just have a quick meeting. I know our meeting on the 8th might be before their meeting, their next town council meeting. So we may be able to do it at that meeting.
But they might have the agenda drafted. I believe their meeting might be the following Monday, but they need to post it probably before we start. So unless we could,
Yeah, we
maybe-
might have to, we might have to play with those dates. So we'll talk about and we'll get back to the committee as to dates that you're available. And if it's not doable, then I think we should ask for an actual date that it should be discussed by the council. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to stress that I do believe, again, I do believe if the council was given the opportunity to vote on the resolution, whatever their resolution is, but based on our actual request, I don't think we'd be sitting here, having this conversation. It just hasn't been able to take place for whatever reason. So, yes, we can work on that, and I can talk to Mr. Anderson about what, get clarification of what the resolution would actually say. So I will do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, any comments or questions for Mr. Levis on that topic? Anything from the public? I don't see any hands, Mr. Murphy.
No, there are none.
Okay, then we can move on to agenda item number 14, COVID-19 update. I believe that's you again, Mr.
Yes,
Levis.
it's me. I'm going to try to share my screen here. All right. Oh, jeez. Sorry. I'm going to stop share for a second. Apologize. All right, let me try this again. All right. Everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
So just going to kind of go through this quickly. Again, focus on the vaccination clinics. We've already had one. Talk a little bit about the BINEX now, rapid testing, the mandatory testing of athletes, increase the in-person learning at all levels, a little bit about end of school year activities, and then the 2021 academic. So we had our first vaccination clinic. It was held Friday, March 19th. I had thanked Melissa Thibodeau, Deb Oliver, and nurses at Tioga in Hopkins Hill, and Jason Martin. Mr. Martin was a great resource, not only setting up the facility the way that they needed it, but also he was the person that would greet everybody and direct them to an open table. So I want to thank them. There were 511 vaccinations issued. I was given this from the EMA director from Exeter, and our second clinic will be on Friday, April 9th. That's from 2 to 6 p.m., Coventry High School. I don't have a breakdown of who was vaccinated, but I know I was there for a few hours. I saw a lot of our staff, a lot of the food service and bus drivers and bus monitors. So it was a great opportunity. I received a lot of thank yous from people. And again, so the second clinic will be the second shot of vaccine. And again, I want to thank Chief Rick Heiss, the EMA Director Jill Dabrowska, Chief Frank Brown did a great job. He was one of the vaccinators. And the Exeter West Greenwich EMA also supported the effort. So I'm just amazed how quickly we're able to pull that together. I have requested from the state if we'll be able to do the same type of clinic when they open it up for 16 and older, when vaccines become available. Could we open it up for students? They're looking into it. They didn't give me any idea of whether or not it would be a possibility, but they said they would definitely look into it. So we are still conducting the BINAX now rapid testing for all of our students and staff weekly with consent. I don't have updated consent numbers. I can get those. We did start making it mandatory for student athletes to begin be tested on a weekly basis. We started that this week. You know, we have sports that are up and running at both the middle school and the high school. And I haven't received any notification of any pushback whatsoever. So I appreciate the cooperation of everybody. And then we'll continue to do this testing through the end of the year. We're receiving our test kits from the Department of Health on a monthly basis. So it's something to decide if we need to do it next year, if it's something that the state recommends, Department of Health, and will they be, if we did decide to do it next year, will we have to purchase the kits? So that's an update on that. So this is, I think, which is important. And, you know, we're just talking about the budget. Everything we've done without any other support other than that one-time influx of federal dollars, which was about, I think, $740,000. So again, the challenges that we've worked through, you know, we have had the support of all of our bargain units to adjust when we were doing the 4 days a week, to adjust schedules because we needed more staff, whether it's covering lunches or having people within our classrooms when students come in instead of typically supervising them in a large area. Even though we were able to hire additional staff, you know, we know that we've had to close classrooms in schools and, you know, teams because of staffing issues. So we have had staffing shortages at time. Transportation, so that originally had been a barrier with the 50% capacity, but I'll talk a little bit more of that. And then again, what I just stated, I think that this community has done an amazing job, our school community, despite the lack of funding that we received, you know, the level funding, and also, you know, the conversation we just had, you know, we have not received any additional funds from the community. So as of today, these are the plans. Our elementary schools, we plan on having a full return 5 days per week, April 5th. The middle school, So we started this week on Tuesday, grade 6 came back. I was over there this morning and, other than some challenges in terms of just, doubling the amount of students coming in, I think it's been extremely smooth. One thing that was mentioned to me today, there hasn't been like an influx. The concern was about behavioral issues. Now that we have that many students together in a classroom, again, it's only been 3 days, but I think it's very upbeat, very positive there. So our plan will be after April vacation at the middle school to return 5 days a week. But Mondays will be an early release at 11 a.m. with a grab and go lunch. And the reason we need to do that is, as I mentioned before, the challenges that we face with staffing. We have staff coming in early to accommodate students. So when they come in, they can go right into the classroom. We also have a requirement by the state to have common planning time every other day. So by having 11 a.m. release on Mondays, that will allow us to make sure that we meet those other requirements. We owe staff time for coming in early on Tuesday through Friday. We also have to make up the common planning time. So that's the one accommodation we need to make. The reason we can do this is because the state has pushed forward in terms of 75% capacity on buses. And it's going to allow us to make sure that we can transport our 7th and 8th graders. And then the high school on April 6th, we plan on having a 4-day return. And that'll be again 12:30. And then after vacation, we will have a full 5-day return. And again, they'll leave at 12:30 every day with a grab and go lunch. And we have also surveyed all the parents. We've made it clear that this was the opportunity. So individuals that had concerns that were maybe hybrid, concerned about coming back, they had an opportunity to move to distance learning. Students that were on distance learning had an opportunity to move back in the classroom. We've had to collapse some distance learning programs. As you know, we did not hire additional staff to do distance learning, so we would pull staff out. Early on, we had a few classrooms where students might have been going across multiple schools into a classroom. Those were far and few between. As we've moved forward and over the year, we've had to collapse classrooms. We had to collapse, I believe, 7 or 8 classrooms in the elementary to make this full return possible. So while it does inconvenience, we still are promising and offering the distance learning. We can never offer a teacher. We have no control of if a teacher was decide to leave or went on a long-term leave or retire. So while it creates challenges, I think we've kept our promise that we've offered distance learning to those that want it throughout the year. But this will be the last opportunity to move. But I'm excited. Like I said, looking a few weeks ago, I didn't see how this would be a possibility. And this is because of the work of everybody. We talked about the nurses early, but everybody has had such a significant part in this, including our students and our parents. But our school community has really pulled together to make this happen. And there are many districts that people might have compared this to early on, but there are districts that have more resources than we've had, who have not made the decision to bring back the high school yet. And again, we haven't been focused on this 6 feet. Many districts, some districts stuck to that. When Mr. Cowart and I met with representatives from RIDE, it was clear that 6 foot was, if possible, but they were pushing the 3 to 6 feet. And if you've been into our elementary schools, you see that we've been doing a lot of this work where even 3 feet is questionable. So I want to applaud our students, our staff. They've done an amazing job, and I'm so proud to say that we can have this full return, definitely at the end of vacation. But we have to understand that anything's possible. Like, they talk about new variants, so we have to be cautious. I feel very good that all of our employees, all of our food service, all of our bus drivers and bus monitors will have had the opportunity to be vaccinated and fully vaccinated, with that having an impact upon our return after the April vacation. So The Superintendent's Association is working with the Department of Health and RIDE to look at, what's possible at the end of the year. I'll be honest, I've been working with the high school. Ms. Maycumber and her teacher leaders and administrators have been extremely aggressive. We've reached out to our families and told them, these are the activities we'd like to plan. But also with the caveat or disclaimer that anything, at the time, everything could go backwards. We may not, there could be more restrictions, but, if we're able to open our schools fully, I think that we should be able to control, we're going to have 1,400 kids potentially in our high school, 1,200 to 14. We'll have, 900 to 1,000 students in our middle school. We should be able to plan activities. Again, we know they have to meet the guidelines, but we're taking an approach that we're planning, for awards nights. We're planning for a prom. It may not be a typical prom. We're planning for our graduation where, we'll have all of our students with guests. So we are going forward. Once the guidance comes out and we're able to pair the guidance with our plans, we'll present it all to the committee. Commissioner still is stating that they indicate a plan on a full return in the fall. And then finally, but most importantly, we're in the process of developing a menu of robust summer opportunities for all students. Ms. Ferguson and I have met with and other outside individuals looking at providing exploratory opportunities for our CTE programs for 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th and 8th graders, plus other opportunities for students in the CTE. We've talked about enrichment opportunities for high school students. We know we need to focus on learning loss in terms of the areas of reading, writing, and math. But we also want to give opportunities, most importantly, for students just to be kids this summer. So we're working with the YMCA, with the recreation program. I've worked with the Good News Bible group that provides after-school programs. We're willing to work with any, and also our own teachers. Mr. Coward's been working on the last couple of days for kind of an RFP, a brief, where teachers would be able to look at their areas of interest or skills, and we could provide opportunities in the summer, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 days a week, which we'll be able to fund using the COVID funds, which is an appropriate use of it. Mr. Sands ran probably one of the most vibrant, robust summer programs that had international students come to it when he worked for a private school. So we have his expertise and see how we can bring it to the table. So, in the next few weeks, there's so much going on. We're going to focus on getting kids back in safely, but I want you to know we'll be coming out with opportunities for every single student this summer. And I'm looking forward to that. I think we need to see our kids, our staff, just to, have some sense of normalcy and some sense of social opportunity. So with that, I will open it up. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Thank you for that update. Mr. Pearson, any questions or comments for Mr. Levis?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Colonian.
No questions. Thanks for the update. It was appreciated.
Thank you. Mr. Murray. You're on mute, I believe, Mr. Murray.
Bound to happen at least once. I have a couple of questions, but I can talk to Mr. Levis offline. I don't need to ask them right now. It's getting late. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Mr. Florio.
No questions, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions either. Just thank you so much. And I'm very pleased to hear that, our kids are coming back, more than we had. And I'm just so grateful for all the work of everyone involved to make this happen. And also looking forward to the programs that are going to come out this summer for our students, as well as the graduation plans and activities for our seniors and our graduating, the kids that are graduating, even in the lower grades, probably. We've got some things that we'll be able to offer this year, which we weren't able to offer last year. So looking forward to hearing about that. I will ask the public if they have any questions for Mr. Levis. I don't see any hands raised.
Nope, there are none.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. So we can move on to another superintendent's report, agenda item number 15. So you're on again, Mr. Levis.
So, I mean, I think we know that we're I mentioned this before, that Mr. Sands and I will be putting together, much of the information shared tonight, but in a way that we're sharing with the council and the community. We'll put that together by early next week, share that with you prior to our meeting on July 1st, April 1st. So we already talked about that. And the second one, Ms. Pat, no, I think I put it on under my report, but I know that Dr. Dixon had asked for, to start the reports by the school committee. I know, just full disclosure, I had a conversation this morning with Dr. Dixon. She happened to be over. Wanted to introduce it to Mr. Sands, and I had discussed with her about, she had mentioned some things that she'd like to see. I wanted to know what the council's expectation was, because, we've had this conversation, and obviously you're welcome to have the conversation. Basically what I do is I take some of the things that I submit to you on my weekly reports and put them in a report that a school committee member goes and reads. And, I don't know if that's the best way to update. Again, just my opinion, but I'm not sure what the expectation of the committee is, but also what's the expectation of the council. So I had asked her, and she's going to ask the council members at a meeting what they like. So it might give us a little time, but again, if that's not a question you wanted me to ask, the horse is out of the barn already. So.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Yes, Mrs. Dixon actually asked me a couple of times if we would wanted to resume our weekly reports to, our monthly reports to the council. And as you all know, traditionally that's the last meeting of their month. So it's the second meeting of the month. And quite honestly, I didn't really move on it right away because Mr. Murray is on the agenda often these days, just reporting about the building initiative. So I wasn't sure how much, how much time they really had for us to do a report, but I did promise her that we would discuss it at our meeting. And obviously, I'm glad, Mr. Levis, that you asked, to see what their expectation is, if they want the same kind of report or if they're looking for something different. So I don't know how the committee feels about going back to that format that we used to do. Mr. Pearson, how do you feel about it?
Over Zoom, interesting. Yeah, it's probably about time that the council is better informed of the ongoings of the school department. So I'm in favor of doing a school department report. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Colonian?
Yeah, I'm in favor too.
All right, thanks. Mr. Murray?
Yeah, I know I've taken up a lot of airtime lately, but I think it'd be good as we get in the budget season to resume those meetings and maybe, depending on what their desire is, maybe have a little more meat on the bone as far as content. And I'm sure that's maybe what they're looking for as well, based on some of the past comments. I know some of the new council members have iterated in the past. So I think it's time.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Florio?
I agree, but the old council, they never really listened. We used to give the reports and they still would say, oh, that's wonderful. And would still not cooperate or work with us or even return phone calls. So I say, sure, no problem. Not for me, but before we went in with great expectations and they were dashed. So yes, I agree.
All right, thank you, Mr. Florio. You're just a wellspring of optimism tonight.
Well, yeah, I am. You know?
What I'd like to comment on is, I think we have to remember the town council, the people that attend town council meetings sometimes are a different group that attend, school committee meetings. So anything that, any report from the school committee about what's happening in schools, whatever, it ultimately takes, whatever form actually they ask us to do. I think, you know, you have to remember there are people out there that are listening that aren't maybe typically attend our school committee meetings. So from that perspective, I think it's really important. And I do think the council listened in the past. It's just that maybe they weren't on the same page as us as far as some of the funding or whatever. But I'm not, it's very difficult to get into people's heads and understand and in their shoes. So I will leave it at that. And I'm definitely willing to go back to the way we did do business. And I think it is a good idea. And I think we'll wait and see what the council says, if they want something more in depth from us or just a typical rundown of our celebrations and what our kids are doing and what our teachers are doing and things like that. I mean, it's kind of good news usually that we brought to them. And so I'm a believer in good news. I think that sometimes that's important. So thank you, Mr. Levis. I don't see any attendees asking any questions on that particular item.
There are none.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. So I think we can go right into agenda item 16, which is citizens' comments. Are there any comments from the citizens that are gathered at this meeting? Looks like there are none. So I'm going to go to the next item, which is scheduling the next meeting. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next virtual meeting of the school committee be scheduled for Thursday, April 15, 2021 at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Martin?
Ephraim Patino,
Yes.
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. And before we adjourn, I just want to again welcome Mr. Sands to his first meeting. And just as you can see, we don't have quick meetings. We do allow for public discussion. So this is actually an early ending. There are many meetings that go a lot longer. So yeah, I'm glad you're in for the long haul.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pat.
Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, make a motion that the meeting be adjourned at what
I
time,
have
Madam Chair?
8:56.
At 8:56 p.m.
I second the motion.
And I guess we can just raise our hands on this one if we're willing to adjourn. I've never known anyone to say they didn't want to adjourn, so it's a pretty typical response. All right, motion carries 5-0. We are officially adjourned. Thank you to the public for attending and to everybody's attention this evening. So again, thank you all. We'll see you on April 1st. I guess.
Okay. Take
All
care.
right.
Have a good
Bye,
night.
everyone. Good night. Have a good rest of the evening.
Good night.